Welcome to the Fabcast Episode 9 Foreplay Questions on Golf, Relationships, and the Business of Connection. Before networking events had name tags and LinkedIn had connection requests, there was tea time. Today, Jamie, Carlo, and I are joined by our Fab guest, Chris Robertson, Senior Partner in M&A and golf enthusiast. And we're digging in to the spaces where culture, commerce, and promo intersect in the world of golf. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Looking forward
Hey,
to it.
Chris. Thanks for joining us.
Great. So let's begin. With the world of instant messaging, AI outreach, and virtual meetings, why do you think golf continues to be such a powerful environment for building business relationships?
I think when it's done right, I think golf can create something that business rarely does anymore, which is uninterrupted and unstructured time and access to some very important people. There's a lot you can cover, over 4 or 5 hours of golf that you can't cover in a quick Zoom meeting or WhatsApp meeting or whatever have you. And in the world of kind of speed automation, golf still offers presence, still offers that in-person experience, which I think, again, can't always be mimicked or imitated, through AI and on all these other means that we're getting to in business.
People often say you can learn a lot about someone's character on a golf course. What qualities or behaviors become visible during a round that might never surface in a boardroom?
It's an interesting one. The two don't always equate, but I do believe that, sometimes a few bad holes in golf can kind of give you a bit of an honest leadership test. Does someone stay composed? Do they take accountability? Can they reset themselves quickly? As far as like how do they treat their people? How do they treat the people in their group? How are they treating the people in the meeting? And also are they competitive? But I would say competitive in a healthy way. So, there's always a need to win or, want to succeed and compete, whether they do it in a way that's kind of conducive to those that are in the group, or, can do it in a bit more of a combative way. Golf's not easy. I think boardrooms aren't easy. And so seeing some people's tendencies in those kind of environments, can be interesting and maybe a bit of a litmus test or a bit of a window into, how they might perform outside the golf course.
Jamie, I can attest to Chris's competitive nature.
Yeah,
I've been told I can be a little bit intense.
yeah. I was listening. I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't think I'd be very successful in a round of golf, or in business because I like to use the foot wedge, man. Like sometimes things just get a little weird, and you just got to pull out a club that's unconventional, and then the wheels fall off, and my game goes away with it, and then I just get in the golf cart and leave.
You know what? There's room for all of the above. In the tournament that I was playing in, over the weekend, I would say half of the people that were there were very highly competitive and kind of more established players, and the other half were there for a good time, being out in nature and networking and talking. And so I would say in that environment, like foot wedges and unconventional approaches are totally acceptable. But I think you gotta kind of set those ground rules as you go in, for sure.
That's okay. So that's setting the ground rules. Like that's super important because, as we were working on this issue, I think I felt like my anxiety increasing because when I was really young, like coming to the US, I was told a few a few things like you got to learn how to play golf. You need to someone this one I don't believe someone told me this, but it ended up happening. You need to know how to dance.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I went to Arthur Murray. Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I took golf lessons because it was
Yeah.
going to be good for business. I found both of them to be incredibly anxiety provoking. And we were laughing because yesterday the US Open was on here. And my son, who's in his early 20s now, we were talking about golf. And I said, I've never been to Shinnecock Hills, but I went to Bethpage Black in 2002 when Tiger Woods won. And I
Hmm.
was there and that experience. And then from that point on, he's like, well, when was the last time we played golf or hit a golf ball, Dad? I'm like, it was 2017 in Prince Edward Island. And then I just hung it up. But my issue with golf is as a company, can it be inclusive to people who absolutely aren't competitive, who really like being outside, but they don't want to have to perform because they don't know the rules or all the other things. And then to me, golf is this really interesting narrative just about how you lead at work. And so we were super excited about this issue because in our industry, it's literally just like, hey, do you need some logos on your golf balls? And
Right.
does the company store have some golf stuff in it? And it's like, that's not what employees struggle with. They don't struggle with, getting a dozen Pro V1s or some TaylorMades. They struggle with, I get these things. Now, how do I make this work within the context of my job to be done, whether that's M&A or it's data analytics, or maybe we're not even going to a golf course. Maybe we're just going to go to Top Golf or a driving range and we're going to do something, but we can't, I think we can't just take it at face value, because when we do that, there's a lot of assumptions that get in the way. And then we miss this real opportunity. And like, I mean, in M&A, trust is probably the most important thing, right? That needs to be established first. And any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form you can work the process of establishing that trust. If a round of golf or whacking some balls at a driving range do it's all within I think within the rules.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it. I think trust is there, and I think you have to understand the environment you go into. Like I've played a lot of corporate events, corporate scrambles, where I'm the ringer because I've been playing golf for a long time, and I'm playing with maybe three other players that don't play very often. But in those environments, you don't go in with a super competitive nature that we have to win. You're going in to have a fun day. You're getting to meet your group. I can totally empathize with people that don't play golf. It's an incredibly difficult sport. It is an incredibly frustrating sport for those of us that practice it a lot. I think if you have an open mind, yeah, you show up with the right intentions, you kind of set some ground rules, from the beginning. You can still have a fun day, but no doubt I would agree that it's intimidating for those that maybe don't play as many sports or obviously haven't played golf in the past, for sure.
Let me just say one thing. Just everybody can have a Tiger Woods day. They just can't do it every day.
Mm.
Or I would say maybe everyone's gonna have a Tiger Woods like shot. I think
Okay.
what keeps people coming back is, and it's even the same analogy works for myself, is that I always remember the one great shot or the one great hole that I had. So
Mhm.
as frustrating as the other 17 holes may have been that day, you always remember the one silver lining or the one positive. So, to me, someone who hits a drive 200 yards that's never got a golf ball airborne, someone who makes a 50-foot putt that's never been on a green before, those are exhilarating kind of, high adrenaline moments that I think, get people excited to be like, you know what, maybe I can do this and maybe I can come back and try to get a little bit better next time.
So, Chris, that actually leads to the theme that we're exploring in this issue isn't really about that one shot. It's about the
Yeah.
setup. It's about the setup and how does the idea apply to business and leadership?
For me, I think the lessons that I take from golf, around to, growing client relationships, kind of growing business, I think there'd be a couple. First, I think it's patience. I think we started to talk about the same concept, which is, not every shot, not every round, and not every quarter is going to feel perfect. But there's a level of consistency and kind of persistence, kind of compounds. And so, effort, I think, is important. Preparation does matter, whether it's in business or in sport. The amount of time that you spend preparation usually has a strong influence to the outcome. Whether that preparation helps you be more confident in what you're doing, whether the outcome helps you be a better golfer. And, I think preparation definitely, kind of cuts across both environments, regardless of what happens as you prepare, because I obviously think it's integral. I think you have to have the ability to recover. Business like golf, rewards resilience more than perfection. And I think you gotta, sometimes you just gotta laugh. Like the other day, one of my playing partners hit a terrible shot, and he just, it could have been a very embarrassing moment, but he just sat there and he laughed at himself, and he just kind of sat there, and everyone else started laughing with him. And then we did a foot wedge, Jamie, to your point, and put him in a better spot, and then he hit the second shot, and we just kept going. But it was just a great moment of humility, resilience. But he recovered well. We moved on, and we had a great day, but you don't let those kind of moments define you. But I believe in preparation, for anything, golf and business are pretty critical to the outcome.
I
Yeah.
love that. That was so good. I have one question. When you approach it the way you do, and let's say that's the right way to approach it, and now we bring in the corporation, like the firm, right? But let's bring in the big brand and how now you're representing this professional services organization in the marketplace, and your conduct on the course has to be becoming of the brand and the values and the culture of the firm. Is the environment and the culture there, does it provide the time and the space for everybody to prepare the way they need to prepare, or do you see a gap there where things can be improved? Because I think when we talk about golf and we're talking about corporate golf, we're literally talking about the same thing. We're just talking about doing work, doing it at a really high level, playing within the construct of the game and the rules. And I remember one of the things we always struggled with was finding the time and also convincing people that preparation was part of their job and not something they needed to rush through just to get to some sort of result. And so how does a big company like yours with such diversity instill like your values across, like is the leadership system designed to absorb all of that?
I would say yes. Would be the simple answer. And I think, what I try to teach to my teams and the people that I work with is I don't show up in a meeting well articulated and have the perfect answer for every question, for every scenario that a client's going to throw at me. But the one
Mhm.
thing that I can control is the preparation. And I think as a senior leader, kind of setting that tone from the top around the amount of time that I spend preparing for meetings, the amount of time I spend going through reports, the amount of time I spend going into the details. I don't think you can ever replace, preparedness. I think if you try to wing it in our settings, you could fumble quite a bit. And I think the same thing in golf is like if you kind of just show up and just assume that, hey, I've played another sport and I've done something else and I can just get out there and kind of make it happen, you're going to be humbled pretty quickly. And I think the
Yeah.
same kind of applies in the corporate environment, and hence why I believe in that, and try to work the people on the other side. Try to put in the time, try to put in the preparation, and you kind of let the results land where they may.
It's interesting. What I heard in all that is don't hire hockey players.
Hockey players have to prepare too, but but
Yeah,
yeah,
the
but
ones who show up at the golf course and be like, "Yeah, I know how to do that." No, no, you don't.
well, they do have a pretty natural advantage. Like a slap shot, translates very well into a golf shot. Maybe a little bit less so for baseball players. They don't tend to
Yeah,
translate well, but yeah.
right, right.
Chris, how do you find the company promotes the event and the type of promotional items they provide for people to remember this event? Do you think they do a good job, or is it very much, oh, wow, this is like a branded tee or a golf ball and you just put it in a drawer somewhere? Do they put an effort to really give you guys stuff that's appropriate and makes you remember this event?
I think where golf events have come is, and from that perspective is, yeah, there's a lot of challenges for people to come up with something new, creative, and innovative, that you will remember. Because to your point, you go to most corporate tournaments and you'll get logo tees and golf balls. Sometimes you'll get a logo golf shirt or a hat, but like, there's some very standard things that you'll get in most events. But there's also more creative approaches that people have taken, to try to kind of create a more memorable experience. So you can have things like on-course experiences with your executives, where like executives will play with multiple clients or multiple people in the company. There's a lot to be said about the pricing. So, putting more significant prizes on the line for the end of the event, where people's groups do well and you do well as a team. You have the chance to kind of be part of these bigger prizes, versus the more standard stuff. An event I was at recently as well, they gave you, for lack of a better term, a credit, and they had 4 different stations, and you basically had so many credits that you could use, but you can go to each station and pick something that was personalized to you, so something that you would connect with, versus getting a standard package that everybody received. Because to me, that would be more memorable for me, walking away from this golf event. So,
So it's really like more like a great gifting experience. Were they still logoed though, like corporate wise, where there's still some sense of branding so that you get a tie-in between the event or the company and the gift, or was it just an unlogoed gift that you appreciated more, or a combination of the two?
It's both. I think you can only go so far with logos, with logo material. I mean, even for my company, I have a lot of logoed stuff, but I don't wear my logoed stuff everywhere. I usually only wear it when I'm at the company event or when I'm at a more corporate specifically event. And it doesn't mean it's not nice apparel or nice, some nice stuff that I've been given, but that's usually when I'm going to wear. So I think there's a time and a place for all of the above. But I think the events that have done the best with me have been a combination of giving you some logo things, 'cause I understand the need to promote and kind of market the event and the importance of that, and all of the sponsors and partners that participate in that process. But I think the ones that have succeeded with me have made it more of an experience where I walked away thinking that that was a really nice X. And I remember getting that at that golf tournament. I remember golfing with these people. And I just remember, having a very fond memory, of that particular event.
Yeah, I think in promotion, like we look at a lot of things that are starting to be subtler with the logo and then maybe getting more into messaging. Is there an inspiring, fun message? Is there a motivating message? Is there something beyond the logo that is more relatable on a personal level? And then you would go ahead and pick that for sure. In the promotional world, Chris, I guess so many of the brands that you are dealing with have to be up front and center, have to make themselves visible through the things that they do, through the relationships they build. And in the swag world, promotional merchandise and or things, how can brands maximize those things?
I think swag and merchandise is almost like table stakes. Like I think it's like the point of entry, where I think everyone expects it. I think everybody wants to have it. I think everyone's interested in what's the next tournament going to do. That's going to be interesting, fun, and creative. So I think there's always going to be a place for it. But I think it is evolving, and I said the more you can make it this tie the swag to an experience or experiential, kind of event or kind of aspect of the event. I think it has more impact. I think in some ways about what the credit card companies do, where you can use your points to bid on an experience, and you get to go have a one in a lifetime experience. Like, so for me, going to play golf with Steph Curry, I'm a basketball fan, I'm a golf fan. If I could bid on something like that, like to me, like that experience would be fantastic as an example. But so again, it would be less about the brand and what Steph Curry, the brands that represent him, and obviously the company that I have. But it'd be more about the experience of getting to play. And so I think if you can tie product promotion and the swag that we're talking about here with experience and kind of the experience at the event, I think that's what resonates, and I think that's what creates the positive affinity and kind of affiliation.
Wow, that's a big idea. Seriously, like imagine aligning the firm's corporate meetings management group with procurement, with sponsorship marketing, and HR to design a PIP, positive, improvement, such that you get to your level of performance and that unlocks an incentive award that brings together, these high level marketing elements of the firm with a real experience in which maybe the brand could influence that's the Steph Curry execution or activation, maybe even a municipal activation, depending upon if the firm's even working with that brand. And then there's I don't know, I can't remember who the other side of the podcast was, but Steph Curry was on it, and the podcast is called Under 50. And
Yeah.
they play together. And so
Oh, Bryson DeChambeau.
right,
Yeah.
DeChambeau. And so evolving, like what you said, evolving the table stakes, because that's what we've always really been considered, evolving the table stakes to almost now be part of a team of people who could ideate together on something bigger that would actually align maybe with a senior partner and even with the team that they're leading, as opposed to, hey, yeah, we're going to get more of those Pro V1s in the company store this year, so hopefully you'll be happy with that.
In the world of business analysis, where you're going in to assess costs, where you're going in to assess maximum efficiency and productivities and relationships between departments to see where are the holes, where can we improve? In Jamie often talks about this in procurement for promotional swag, there is so much money spent on
Mhm.
pens and notebooks and money spent that is not well spent. that ends up in some closet, in some broom closet, in some desk as a throwaway. If that was more thoughtfully planned as part of the overall business plan, is it in your industry considered? Is swag looked at? Because often the departments aren't talking about that, and yet there is so much money spent there and so much money wasted there. Is that looked at? I mean, I'm just curious.
For me, I don't participate in a lot of what goes on behind the scenes. I guess I would pretty confident that there's a group that spends a lot of time thinking about the swag and procurement and kind of the promotional events and the marketing stuff. I do know that we have access to a catalog of things that we can go and, if we're looking to, host clients and do other things that, there's things that we can go and buy that are obviously brand compliant and kind of, aligned to what we need to do. But I would say that, from when I think about the events that we do for whether it be clients, whether it be for our employees, whether it be for trainings, whatever it may be, we're more invested in creating the experience versus the swag. So I think the swag shows up as part of the experience, but again, the emphasis is on the experience, and then how does the swag kind of add to that experience and give somebody maybe a memento or something that they can remember that experience by. And then some people will obviously really resonate with that experience, and that memento will have deeper meanings. Like you said, instead of being in the desk, it's on the desk.
Yeah, I think what I struggle with is how do you attest to that to those things, without them just being kind of anecdotal. Like, I think we can assume that when you give somebody something, there's some reciprocity bias that will set in. And what I would like to see more of is like, there's been a lot of requirements put on procurement around sustainability, like EcoVadis certification.
Sure.
Obviously, but it kind of went too far. And really, instead of worrying about, is this a circular loop? How are you mitigating waste? It's just like, well, do we need this in the first place? And what is this designed to do? And in most cases, when you're an afterthought and you are just kind of a second tier to the experience, and this is what I learned from MasterCard. They went from being the, buy everything you can company to being the priceless company. And so with that, when you're on the side of providing all the merchandise for all of the brand worldwide, and now they're saying, we're not going to do that anymore because we want people to invest in experiences, figure that out for us. And now the whole portfolio of merchandise has to evolve to do exactly what you're saying, which is be completely aligned with whatever FIFA is doing or whatever the PGA is doing or whatever. And then it becomes super interesting. I think the issue I have is most of it is just treated as, here's the company store, you can get some stuff, but it's never been like, use this for this. Here's the data that this creates, and we'll give you that data as a user. It's never been measured. And so where I take exception, like, and this is a real example, massive transportation company, probably the second largest in the world, their logo is distinct. It's purple and it's orange. They spend over $20 million a year in branded merchandise and have no attestation metric. They just know what they buy. They know what categories. They know, oh, we bought hats, we bought but nobody really understands. So then the business units and the executive office says, we got to cut expenses. So someone in procurement comes into this category and says, we need to cut it in half. So it needs to be 10 million a year, not 22 or whatever the number. No plan, no nothing. And you can do that when you have no metrics because it doesn't matter. You don't know what you're going to miss because there's no data that substantiates it. So they literally lop off that and they haven't missed a beat. And everyone who had budget for it is just like, yeah, we don't have budget anymore. And I'm like, okay, well, if we could have put that $10 million a year over the course of this contract into more productive use, like training people how to be more productive, impactful, giving them a playbook that is designed to do these things. And we spent less on the 1.2 million in golf balls. And we actually maybe spent $500,000 and took the other 700 and built it into design and process and all these other things that move people and talent forward. I would love to see this $30 billion industry go to 20 billion and invest 10 billion in education. And when I asked the head of the world of tchotchkes that, and I said, are you prepared to shrink the industry so it can grow? He literally looked me off like Tom Brady had three more reads, and I was just like the last guy he was ever going to address. But then your sustainability teams at firms like yours, they really need to push it through, and no one wants to help them. It's
Uh,
just, it's all quagmire.
It is, it's a tough intersection of, like you said, of being impactful, but people doing their job, and then
Yeah.
the people at the end that are part of the experience trying to take those things and make them into an experience. Maybe Jamie, the other example that I think of, the Phoenix Waste Management Open.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's one of the ones. Obviously, it creates quite an experience because everyone remembers the par three with where obviously everyone's drinking in the stands and it's quite ruckus and they're cheering versus being very very silent. But I think the one thing that I leave when I watch that tournament beyond the fun parts of that course and the hole is I think that they do such a great job of messaging and communicating like what they're doing for the environment and how many plastic bottles they've saved and how much waste they saved that by and all the things that they do at the event where they actually promo all the things they're doing as a company at the event to try to
Yeah.
drive waste down in our oceans, in our landfills and do a whole bunch of other things. And I don't know, maybe I'm nerding out a little bit, but I like that and I like to see the impact that they're creating, but they put that into the communication and they put that into how they run the event and they have these little spotlights during the tournament. And to me, I think that's a great example of they've matched up a golf experience while getting out a corporate message and then talking about all the great things that they're doing. And then they're obviously piloting all these wonderful concepts at the event so people can experience it as well. And to me, again, I don't know, there's something there, I guess, about the intersection of doing all the above.
Yeah, that kind of sums that up all beautifully, Chris.
You already talked about the exclusivity, Jamie. The culture of golf seems to be changing from exclusivity and status towards more community enjoyment and accessibility, to Jamie's point before. So, are there specific brands you think that are helping shape that shift?
I think there's, from a golfing brand perspective, I think there's lots of brands that are gaining momentum that are definitely making golf feel a little bit less intimidating and a bit more welcoming, a bit less formal, creating more environments to do that. I think, Jamie, you mentioned one of the ones that I would have had on my list, which would have been Top Golf. They've been one of the kind of a category creator. They kind of created these situational events where you can go hit golf balls, but it's as much about the golf as it is about the drinks, the environment, the food, the ambiance, the music that you have there. They kind of gamify the experience of golf. People hit great shots, they hit ridiculous shots,
Yeah.
but that's the whole point is that it's not intended to be a really formal and structured way of doing it. It's a group activity. They do kind of focus on non-golfers first. It's a year-round also. It's a pretty low intimidation environment versus, getting out for 18 holes, which can be quite the commitment. So I think Top Golf would be one. Perhaps another one that I would put out there is like a brand I'm just going one that I'm familiar with, but a brand like Municipal, which I think is Mark Wahlberg has been involved with that as well. But again, it's the whole concept of the Muni course. So the Muni course in a golf context was meant to be like the courses that are accessible to everybody. So you don't have to be part of a private club to be able to
Yeah.
play golf course and that, people should generally have access to golf. And I think his philosophy is that you can still have a lot of fun being a Muni player and kind of playing the municipal courses. And that's how most of us grew up playing the sports. But again, the whole concept is access to it, and you don't have to be a private club member or you don't have to be a certain profile in order to be able to play golf and to be able to enjoy it.
So if I gave you a crazy statistic, and I can't speak to your company, but I can speak to some other big firms. Let's say we're not going to name names, but let's just say it's the largest asset management company in the world and it starts with a B. What do you think their annual golf ball budget is?
I would have no idea. You know what? As
I
much
know
as
it's crazy, right? Just
I've
take a
been part
wild
of it, I
guess.
don't think I've ever actually been on the procurement side of having to do it for the event.
Okay. So I'm happy you use the P word, procurement,
Okay.
because in all of this, right, there's the stakeholder, which is you, because you're vital to the organization. I can't even imagine how complex your ecosystem is in terms of stakeholders that you serve, whether it's bankers or it's, corporations and executives. Like that's a complex web of high pressure stuff. And so let's just say you want to outreach to certain stakeholders and it's that time of year and golf makes sense. Procurement has no idea how to make that work for you because they know how to buy the golf balls. But then you get the people who have to do the business and the systems and the procurement and maybe the even where to go within the firm and what to buy. And let's say this isn't even your job. It's some junior person who comes into the organization and now they've got to make sure that everything's set for this top golf event because everything's riding on the relationships to this deal. And nobody comes to the table together to recognize just how important all of this is. It literally comes down to a conversation with someone in procurement that says, can we get another quote on $1.2 million worth of golf balls? Because that's what we bought last year, and we think we're going to buy the same amount this year. And
Sure.
I'm like, I think we could be more strategic about this whole decision. And then that's how it all works. And so this issue is beautiful. And it's thoughtful. And I laugh like when Lori came up with the idea of foreplay and being able to tie that in and just get, capture someone's attention. Cause like we said, like everyone's starving for it, but the value's got to be delivered in the moment. I hope procurement people will learn that they can help the people in M&A by asking more questions than just how many golf balls do you need next year?
To that point, if a company wanted to create its own version of the fairway as a thought, a place where clients and employees or prospects genuinely connect, what would that look like to you, Chris? I mean, you help structure companies so often and analyze.
It's maybe a classic answer of it depends. Like you can create a kind of a curated dinner, a client forum. It could be a learning event. It could be like a lunch and learn. It could be like a corporate retreat or like a retreat that you have with your clients. Oftentimes we'll do things like labs and kind of very curated sessions for 1 or 2 days, like 1 or 2 intensive days of, going through strategy and going through, things that we need to kind of work through with the client. And I think it's in those moments that, what you're doing ultimately at the end of the day is finding ways to identify chemistry, I guess, but they all kind of centered for me around dedicated time to kind of build relationships. So for me, it's less about the format and it's the commitment to be present, to be dedicated in those moments, and to be invested. Maybe the other analogy I can give is kind of like if I think about golf, the fairway is a safe place to be, and ideally that's where you want to be when you're hitting your next shot. So I think if you can create a safe place for your customers, your partners, your vendors, your team members, your staff, the ultimate format doesn't matter as long as people feel like it's a safe place to kind of be themselves. And I think that you can make meaningful inroads through golf. But again, the reason I like it again comes back to the human connection that golf affords, and again that unfettered, unstructured access to people for a dedicated period of time. AI is going to make our world easier. It's going to make, some of the low-hanging fruit and some of the more administrative things for some people, a lot faster. It can get people up to speed a lot quicker. There's going to be a lot of benefits to it. But again, it doesn't replace human connection and human reaction. And I think there's people in my business that, they said, oh my God, well, AI might replace what you guys do in 10 years from now, it could be 5 years from now, who knows? But the one thing that he did say is that, but AI can't replace relationships. And then those people that own the relationships, those people that build the relationships, and those people that dedicate the time to build those connections are going to be the ones that can harness AI to its full potential. Those that don't, AI is just going to be another productivity tool, like many of the other ones that we've seen come out in recent years.
That's a powerful statement. And welcome and thank you.
Chris, if you could leave then our listeners with one lesson that golf teaches about business, relationships, or life, what would that be?
It might sound a bit corny, but to play the long game. Most of us are never going to be super skilled or have the same experience as a golf professional like Tiger Woods, but we can still create our own version of success by just trying to get a little bit better each day. Again, it's not about the perfect shot. It's not about the outcome always, but it's about the preparation that goes into it. And if we can get better each day, we can enjoy our time kind of doing that. You'll find yourself in a better spot over time. So I think playing the long game is the analogy I'd give.
Really appreciate the fact that you've joined us and taken your time to share your thoughts. It's been a great conversation.
It's great. I'm never going to shy away from talking about golf.
Thank you for doing it.
It's nice to tie it back to corporate experiences as well.
Thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, swing for the stars.